It's really nice to be here for a couple of reasons. One, to talk to you about something that is so important to all of us working in the room, but also because I'm a member of Parkland. So I'm, for the first time in my career, within 30 seconds of both a steam room and a jacuzzi. So if the thought of cuts gets too bad, you know where I'm going to be. Not long after the last government came to power in 1997, I took a job as a policy officer working for a national older people's charity. And I remember distinctly colleagues in other organisations saying to me that I joined at a great time because after a decade of standing on the sidelines, moaning to the government about what needed to be done, the voluntary sector was actually being invited by government departments to come into the fold and start coming up with the solutions to the community problems we were all worried about. Great, I thought. And what followed for me was a decade of increasingly close partnership between the voluntary sector and government at both a national and a local level. Now, this partnership, as we all know, has led to some significant improvements in services and support for some of the most vulnerable people in our city and our county. But it's also, perhaps inevitably, resulted in the voluntary sector playing an increasingly high-profile role in the delivery of public services. And I was doing a bit of research last night, looking at the latest figures from NCVO, and I saw that the voluntary sector's earned income from delivering statutory contracts is now at £9.1 billion nationally. That's up a staggering 128% since the start of 2000-2001. Now, I'm particularly conscious about this fact right now because I'm chief executive of a local charity that over the past decade has nearly doubled in size on the back of securing and delivering new contracts from the public services. Now, unfortunately, our bigger role in delivering public services means that quite a few of us are now facing the reality of public spending cuts with a fairly high degree of trepidation, and I think that's quite rightly so. We've already seen some of the funding programmes which support aspects of our work, in my case the Supporting People programme, hit by the £6.2 billion worth of spending cuts announced by the Chancellor in May, and we're all, not particularly excitedly, waiting to see what the outcome of the comprehensive spending review will bring, and also what the £32 billion worth of spending cuts announced in the budget will actually mean for us. Now, I'm worried about the impact that that is going to have on local charities here in the city and in the county. I'm more worried about the impact that it's going to have on some of the vulnerable homeless people that I work with, and I'm sure you share concerns for your client group. Do you know what I'm most worried about, though? I'm most worried that some of us, or even many of us, will see the cuts as a reason to batten down the hatches and go back to the sidelines, where we see our role being to criticise and complain about what the government can't do and what it's doing, and not be part of trying to find the solution to those problems. Because if ever there was a time for the sector to stand up and articulate a clearly set out view and vision for our communities, and also to work together to protect some of our most vulnerable citizens, it's right now. So what I wanted to do just for a few minutes this morning was to set out for you some of the ways that I think we could be and should be working together over the next few months and probably the next couple of years in order to protect our organisations, but much more importantly strengthen our communities through what is going to be, we're all agreed, a pretty difficult time. To begin with, I think it's absolutely crucial that we have a clear and coherent voice in the strategic discussions that are taking place right now in the city and the county about where cuts are going to be implemented. And today is a really good starting point, and thank you very much, Val, for putting it together. But we have to take the priorities that we look at today and agree upon today forward to groups such as the local strategic partnerships and others, so that the priorities that we want and we know for our communities are taken into consideration when it comes to determining where to wield the axe. Now, in all of this, we have to understand that there are inevitably going to be very strong competing interests. I'm pretty sure that our colleagues in the statutory sector right now are under an enormous amount of pressure to bring about cuts and will have their own views about where it's best to realise them. Even between ourselves in the voluntary and community sector, I suspect if we get ourselves in the room together, we'll have very different ideas about what should be given the highest priority in the roll call of services that should be saved. So yes, let's be prepared to clearly articulate our views, but here we also have to listen, we have to compromise, and we have to discuss very carefully to make sure that the interests of our communities are put first. And I think that's going to be a difficult thing for everybody to do over the next few months. But I say this to anybody here that's from the statutory service. I am expecting no less from you over the next 3 months and beyond. And actually you should expect no less from us in the voluntary sector as well. A few weeks ago, along with some other people in this room, I attended the very catchily named Economic and Stronger Community Sounding Board meeting that Val put together in preparation for this meeting. And one of the things that many of us in that meeting seemed to be worried about was whether the cuts would be preceded by proper consultation with the organisations and the communities affected. And whilst we did acknowledge that there were significant pressures being experienced by the public sector authorities, we also said that there should be a really clear expectation of consultation placed upon decision makers who were looking at making cuts. We also debated quite vigorously how the voluntary sector should respond if cuts are made in a way that is either unfair or without due and proper consultation. And certainly we felt that we had opportunities through the campaigning, through the compact, and our natural campaigning instincts to make our voice heard. But as a last resort, we do need to make use of public law challenges where we feel cuts are being made without proper consultation, or as one of my colleagues at that meeting said, without equalities impact assessments taking place. I think the more we get involved strategically in decision making relating to cuts, the less likely it will be that we have to resort to such drastic measures. But as a sector, we do need to be aware of those options should we feel the need arises. But you know, to be honest, however hard we work, however hard we campaign, however effectively we influence the progress of cuts over the next few months, the reality is that many of us will experience the cuts firsthand and are going to have to make tough choices in terms of the level of services we can provide and the numbers of people we can employ. I know that as an organisation I'm going to have those conversations and those difficult decisions. And it doesn't help that we're also dealing with it at a time when the sector is still feeling the consequences of the recession in different ways. So I'm sure you'll empathise with the fact that I know that demand for my services at the moment is increasing. I also know that collectively, donations to all of our different causes are decreasing. And again, going back to the NCVO figures I was looking at last night, a third of us have absolutely no cash reserves whatsoever. And that's the stark reality that some of us are going to be dealing with over the next 18 months when we look at the additional impact of public, all of you at different points during the day, but not in the jacuzzi.